Francisco. He chairs the Senate Finance Committee, and he's joining us tonight from the Capitol. Senator, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
You look no worse from wear, so I guess you're doing okay. How many hours was it today?
It was 7, and basically that's what it's been each day. But this year we've actually been on time, except for maybe 20 minutes late. In the past, it used to be about 2 hours over. So it's going very well from an efficiency standpoint.
Well, I can't say I'm surprised, because if there's one thing that I remember about the GOP-controlled Senate, things started on time. Apparently, you're still living in the Joe Bruno era in that one point.
In that point, yes.
So today was public safety, as I mentioned. We heard, and this is a key portion of Andrew Cuomo's budget, we heard from some corrections officials and also from the new state police superintendent. You guys grilled pretty tough, I thought, were pretty tough on the chief administrative court judge. That she said that she thought that there would be massive court closures and layoffs if, in fact, she cut the budget the way that Andrew Cuomo wants her to. What do you think of that?
Well, she talked about cutting about 0.2% of her budget, and you know, I think most people recognize that closing courts is sort of like when you get your education budget cut. You're going to cut teachers first and nothing else until all the teachers are cut and there's nobody educating kids. So it's something that she was doing to advocate for her budget. But realistically, everyone knows that the Office of Court Administration can streamline their budgets and streamline out some of the needless procedures that have developed over the years. And, you know, I think the courts have to participate just like every other group.
No, actually, the legislature has the ability of reducing numbers and adding numbers, but can't take out language, can't alter the language of the executive budget. So do you foresee that the legislature might actually cut the judiciary budget? Because actually, that's one branch of governor meddling with another branch. That would be pretty unusual, no?
Well, I don't know that we're meddling with the other branch. I mean, the governor is looking for cuts all across the spectrum, and in fact, he chided the Office of Court Administration for not participating.
Right.
And I think we can't go into each line item to determine how the judiciary should do their budget, because they are a separate branch of government. But we can reduce the allocation, and I don't think that the governor would be objecting to that in view of his comments to date.
Okay, so it sounds like that's a possibility then.
It definitely is. If you're going to ask the hospitals and you're going to ask schools and every other organization that that the government funds to make cuts, you can't say the judiciary is something different and there's no way you can cut anything. And I believe it's only an issue of fairness.
You know, as you're hearing this parade of testimony, everybody pleading their case and making pretty cogent arguments, usually, I mean, they all have, they've got numbers and they've got figures and they've got all this information, but you're coming at a budget that actually has some big holes in it. There's no information on where exactly the Medicaid cuts are going to come from. There's no information on mandate relief, because these things the governor has punted over to task forces. Dean Skelos, the majority leader, said he is concerned. He thought the governor delayed in terms of putting forward the budget. Are you also worried about the timeline?
I'm worried about the timeline, but more importantly, I'm worried about us being able to do our job. About 60% of the budget is to be named later. It's like a basketball trade. You get the certain individual, then a player to be named later.
Right.
The prison closure is a perfect example. I questioned at length Commissioner Fisher today about the Corrections Department, and the way the executive order reads is that in the event that cuts cannot be agreed to by this task force when it's appointed and when it does its work, then he has the authority, the commissioner has the authority to do what he wants. Now, how do you possibly perform your legislative function and decide whether those are good things or bad things without the knowledge in advance? And I asked Fisher, I said, you must have some ideas what you have in mind, or what are good ideas to cut the prisons or to cut other parts of your budget, and he refused to answer. He basically says, well, I'm charged to go to this task force and present it to them and so forth and so on. I said, well, aren't you charged to present your budget to the legislature as well? And he really didn't have a satisfactory answer. So that is a serious problem.
Okay, so Senator, what are you going to do about it, though? In other words, you're concerned about the timeline. Dean Skelos is worried about the timeline, that you won't have enough information to do your job. You'll be too pressed for time, which, by the way, is probably by design. There are a lot of people who believe that that's what the governor wants here. How are you going to respond?
Well, I think one way to respond is if the legislature as a whole passes a budget that does not give the broad discretion to the administration to cut whatever they choose to cut. And that's why I've asked members who are on the Medicaid task force, and that's why I asked the Department of Corrections today, and I'm going to ask many more people about this. You know, what are their ideas now? We don't have to, what do you got to wait a month for? I mean, everybody must have some creative ideas, and maybe we can line out some ways to meet the governor's goals in a separate legislative budget and eliminate the language that says, you know, we're going to do it ourselves, meaning the executive branch.
Okay, but you can't eliminate language. That's the rub in the executive budget. You're not allowed to take the language out.
Well, we can pass our own budget, and
Right.
I believe we can, in passing our own budget, we can pass a budget as we see fit. The governor can then veto whatever he chooses to, and then there's a question of override.
Well, I don't think you have the votes in your House. It takes 2/3, and it's pretty tight in there. But what you're suggesting is a two-way, as we've called it in Albany parlance. You're saying that the Assembly and the Senate should get together and make a deal, right? So,
no, what I'm saying is we want to do what the governor wants to do. We want to reach these cuts. We want to make sure that the state of New York doesn't keep increasing taxes. That's what we've been saying for some time, the Republican conference. But on the other hand, without the information, we've got to do something responsibly. Hopefully, make the cuts. If not with the governor, with the Assembly. And if we can't do that, then we're in a bind. And that's why all we're looking for now is information, so we can assist the governor in doing what he wants to do in a responsible way.
Okay, let me just ask you also to change tax for a second. This issue regarding ethics and redistricting, and you know, there's a lot of criticism coming from the other side of the House that the Republicans are somehow not holding up their end of the bargain, that you guys pledged to Ed Koch, the former New York City mayor, that you would support by March 1st a bipartisan, nonpartisan redistricting bill, and in terms of also ethics disclosure of financial statements. Where are you on that?
Well, it's February 9th. It's not March 1st, so there are discussions going on right now about ethics reform, and hopefully we'll have something that's worthwhile to present. As far as redistricting, we have the responsibility to redistrict fairly. The courts are going to be overseeing us as well, and we're going to come up with a plan that is a fair redistricting. And that, you know, nobody said too much about when the Democrats were in control and decided they were going to count the prisoners that are living in upstate New York.
Right.
And we're going to count them in New York City, where they don't really live at the time.
Well, you threatened to sue over that, Senator. Are you going to do that?
Well, I hope we don't have to sue over that. But my point is that, you know, it's easy to cry about fair redistricting, but then they have no problem at all taking people that are living and using the services of our area to and count them downstate for political reasons.
Okay,
it's the same thing as allocations. We want fair allocations. They went overboard by $10 million. They took 71% of the allocation, and they want fair allocation now this year. So it's a political game. We got to do have results, fair results, and we're going to get to that.
Okay, Senator. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I want to thank you, John DeFrancisco, for joining us. I hope we speak to you again soon.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks.